You absolutely crushed Chapel today, and I just want to give a plug right from the beginning of this podcast that if stop right now and go to the original podcast where he speaks his full message. You are not going to want to miss it, and I want you to share it with at least 5 friends, because this is an activation of faith message. The title was Now Faith, and I am just so stirred up by the Spirit. It was a message for our community. It is a message that I believe is for such a time as this. And as students, right before break, did you see how much energy they had?
It was awesome.
It's because the Holy Spirit really used you today.
Super pumped.
Thank you for being here.
I love this school. Thank you. What an honor.
Yes, tell our audience a little bit about you and what brought you here. You come from a pastor missionary family to now then you went into corporate, and now you're back into ministry.
I lived in 100 homes before I was 25, which is not a lie. I wish I was making something up. I was a missionary's kid, pastor's kid. And basically when I met my wife in college, she said I'll never marry a pastor, preacher, missionary, evangelist. I definitely had some issues around ministry. In fact, everything I'm doing now was my nightmare. It was like no doubt for both of us. It was like this would be like our least preferred future. And I will tell you now, God hijacked our lives, and now it's better than any dream we could have ever had, better than any script we could have written. You know, I think better than any narrative we could have concocted. Like, we're actually living an outrageous life because God's been super gracious. And we got married 14 years, got some kids.
One on the way.
Yeah, one on the way.
Congratulations.
And, have this great privilege of leading a missions org where we get to see sustainable transformation.
It's like you cannot outrun your destiny.
Yeah.
I mean, this is part of your heritage, it's part of your DNA, and so did your wife forgive you for switching gears on her?
Yeah.
She's like, wait, false advertising.
Yeah, she actually helped. I think at that point, at some stage in my life, I fell in love with Jesus, and then I fell in love with people.
Wow.
You can't love Jesus and not love people. And so in that stage, I was running businesses, but I just actually started doing stuff at church. We had a small group that grew, then we're running youth and young adults, then we're speaking on Sundays. And so like she was watching, and my story is one of sustained no's to God, followed by very short reluctant yeses. You know, so it's like I kept saying no and then finally said yes. It's amazing what one reluctant yes can do. Like look at Moses turning back.
For sure.
He said no to God, then suddenly he packs up his family, he heads towards destiny. So I think she looked at it and said, you really are doing this more than you're doing work. Like there was a change of passion. You know, so then it was like, I think you need to do more of this. And then I had an issue with my pride, and she pushed me.
But I said no.
Yeah,
well,
she pushed me.
In a way, you kind of made a vow. You're like, I'm not going to do these things.
Yeah, exactly.
So you kind of held to that, but the Lord really pushed through for you.
Right.
And the thing is, you connected your passion. Again, you were finding passion in your calling, and there was joy there.
Right.
And did you feel like you were experiencing favor? Was God just opening new doors for your ministry, or how did you finally say, okay, we're going to do this? We're going to be all in.
I think for us, one of the things I think everyone has to figure out is what their definition of success is. Yeah. And so for us, success just became obedience. You know, so God's never going to say, well done, good and financially blessed servant, well done, good and famous servant. He's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant, which means if you choose obedience as your measuring metric for success, you can be outrageously successful every day because you can be outrageously obedient. And so for us, it was really, we just kept being obedient. You know, I think we stayed humble, continued to walk in honor, and we weren't looking around, we were looking ahead. Like we were very clear, it's not compare, let's not compete. You're only running against the grace for your race. And in that journey of just saying yes to God, it's been outrageous what He's allowed us to be a part of. I think I shared it with you earlier. I'm so afraid to lose what God wants to give us next at the price of holding on to what He's given us now.
So you're like, release.
Everything, all of it. Like, I mean, everything we got, someone gave us. You know, so why not give it? Someone gave us the chance. Someone gave us an invitation. You know, someone gave us resources. You know, someone gave us an introduction. Like everything we had, someone was a part of giving something to us. So we've just said, hey, let's do the same thing with who we are, what we know, what God's doing in our lives. And it's crazy what God gives you when you continue to give everything He gives you away.
It's like just replenishes all the time. You know, it says that God loves a cheerful giver, and I feel that with you. I mean, I haven't known you, but you know, maybe a couple hours today, but that your generosity of spirit and that authenticity, it's so evident, and you so want to give things away. You gave our student body such a gift today. You left it all on the stage. I mean, you really gave your heart. We felt it. And I want to just briefly go over some of the things, the points that you said, but I want to start with the first one. Is when you just went right into the power of agreements. He says, all God's promises are yes, and then we say amen. We get into agreement. And you said the statement. You said Jesus and Satan are after the same thing.
Right.
So let's go
Yeah,
talk to me.
I think it was like 3 months ago was actually the first time I've ever said it. I've always talked about the first part, the revelation behind response. We have a young generation, especially in a conference culture, where you're creating an atmosphere of hype, not knowing that response is actually a holy thing, it's not a hype thing.
Right.
And so I'd always unpack that revelation of when you're saying amen, you're not putting a period at an end of a prayer, but an exclamation point at the beginning of a declaration. And then I've always would say, God's not looking for your assessment. So often we sit in church or listen to podcasts and we're assessing, how will this apply for me? How will this ever happen to me? How could God ever do it? And we're assessing what he's saying instead of simply agreeing with what he's saying. So then I was just sitting there going, in fact, isn't that just what the enemy's after too? Like every day you wake up and the enemy and God are just battling for one thing, your agreement. Are you going to agree with what you see or what God said? Are you going to agree with your past or God's plan? Are you going to agree with your shame or God's, like what are you going to agree with? And then I would take it another step, which I didn't say today. My definition of revival is not a certain amount of encounters or a certain worship set or long services or shake, rattling, roll, whatever culture you come from. My definition of revival is simply when there's more yeses than nos in the room. So when there's more yeses than no in any room, that's in the atmosphere of revival because there's a majority of agreement and alignment.
I love this. And so, for those listening to us, students, friends, leaders, this is such a powerful principle because in the first moment we wake up, we make agreements.
Absolutely.
What do we think about ourselves? Absolutely. What is the day going to look like? What are we going to align with? What lie? What truth? And so this is like a life principle.
Yeah.
And how it seems like a part of who you are, that you are very proactive about what you agree to and what you don't, and what you speak and what you don't. I want to get into that a little bit, but has it always been a part of your life? Has this been who you are, or did you learn it?
I feel like in this, I was the reluctant yes guy, so I had an issue with agreement, so like I think I learned the journey of going like, look what God can do with a reluctant yes. What can he do with a willing yes?
All in yes.
Yeah, and so for me it was just, and I feel like everybody takes the journey where most people run to the edge of complete surrender and they never fully jump in. And the reason why is they don't have a reference point for how good it is. It's like when I was having my first kid, all of my friends that had kids would go, you're going to love this. And I was like, of course I am. Like, this is going to be amazing. And then this kid's born, and all of a sudden this new part of my heart's activated. You have this crazy experience, and then you tell everyone, why didn't you tell me how great it is? And like, we did. You just didn't have the ability to reference it with anything familiar. Yeah. So when it comes to surrender, most people have never surrendered, and they just think it's going to suck, or it's going to be awful, or it's not going to be safe. And that was my journey forever. And then the moment I finally fully trusted God, fully said yes, it was like, this is the best place on the planet. This is
I'm never going back.
Ever. Like there's no ever. Like I would encourage everyone listening, there's something outrageous when you simply say yes. And then I'm definitely big on words. So I'm a massive, like my wife, if she was here, she's like, I hate it. It's like anytime we're saying something, because I just think about what people are saying. For example, people say this in church all the time. We're always going to have more vision than provision. So just think about what you're saying. One, what you're saying is God's vision's never going to be fully funded. Just think about it. God's vision, people say this all the time, like you champion, we're always going to have more vision than provision. It's like, actually, that means God's never going to fund his vision. That means he doesn't have enough resources to execute the vision he gave you. That seems like a horrible God. Like, I want to give you this dream, but you'll never really be able to do it because you're not going to have enough money. And then you actually think about when God first built the Ark of the Covenant, when he first built the church, like in the Old Testament, in the wilderness, it actually says they put the vision before the people, then Moses had to stop them. He actually said, we have too much provision. So God's original design was actually that there'd be more provision than vision. Wow. And a lot of people would say, well, you need more vision than provision because it creates need. Well, you can have two types of need. You can either need more money or you can need more vision. They're both postures of need.
That's right.
So for me, I'm a bit like crazy, sorry for the tangent, but just crazy on words. Another one would be people saying I'm serving another man's vision until I get my own. Like, think about what you're saying.
Oh, you're saying I don't have vision.
Well, you're saying one, that's not my vision. So I'm serving another man's vision. Exactly. I'm not in agreement. Second, you're saying God loves that leader more than you, that their vision gets to live at the price of your vision dying. So for me, I'm like really like. Well,
you know what, you have to, because it says the power of life and death is the power of the tongue, right? Whatever you speak, you eat the fruit of. So you can bless or curse. And I so agree with you, Jedidiah, because think about Jesus created, or God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days with his words.
That's right.
So like you said, we are co-creators. We're doing that all day, every day. But I think we just don't realize how
the time.
unconscious we are, subconsciously we're speaking death over our lives.
And I would even say when people are saying something wrong, I disagree. Like I'll tell people I'm not even going to agree with that.
I reject that.
I had some guys say, because I do caffeinate, I drink a lot of coffee, made some comment about me not living a long life because of caffeine.
Right.
I won't get into it. And I literally go, don't ever, I mean, he's a great leader. I was like, don't ever say that about me. And he was like, so, and I was like, you don't get it. Like, I value these, and I don't agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, right now there's a world that's telling a lot of people who they are, how they should think,
Yes.
what they should look like, and we're literally just, I agree with you. There's something about, I think, our generation that has to stand up and says, actually, I disagree with what I think where the church is headed. I disagree with where our nation's headed. I see God coming back for a glorious church.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I see there being more light than darkness. You know, so at the end of the day, people are saying, well, look where our world's headed, and I'm like, I don't agree with any of that.
Yeah.
I agree with God's report.
This is life-changing. This is a principle for life. And if students can get this, listen, our little kid, if our children can get this is a game
100%.
changer, because agreements are like contracts.
That's right.
And so we have to understand that this is not just a physical world, but this is a very spiritual world. This is, again, the enemy is alive and
Right.
well and wants
Right.
us to. So I just so received that today, what you spoke. Okay, your message now, Faith. I want to get into this a little bit. I don't know if we have a lot of time, but the first point, well, first of all, is we are made in his image. He breathed us into existence, and he gave us all authority. This is, you're talking identity.
Right.
And
right.
that, wow, when we connect with our identity, how empowering is that?
Right.
But I don't think we live life in that knowledge
Right.
of power and freedom.
Right.
So talk about, where did you start to really establish your identity? I mean, you raised him in a Christian home.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was confused for most of it. You know,
Really?
like, yeah, I feel like, you know, that tension of agreement and wrestling between who you think you're supposed to be and who God's called you to be. You know, so I was a business person. I wanted to do everything but ministry. And when God actually started leading me towards ministry, I didn't even know how to like present myself. Like I was actually traveling and communicating, doing it, but I wouldn't resonate with the word pastor. People would say, who are you? What do you do? And I'd be like, I'm a dad. Like I literally was like so bad. You know, like I was just so confused in the process. And then I think obviously when you know, I feel like everyone has the ability to experience fulfillment in every breath. Mm-hmm. And that's when you know you're taking steps in purpose towards purpose. And so I think it was probably in the last 4 or 5 years where it's become very clear. And most people's identity is established in community. You know, so I even think about what we do. It's epic. I love it, but it's more about who we're doing it with.
Yeah.
You know, so anyone who's isolated, I always say an isolated Christian is a defeated Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Really, an isolated anyone's a defeated everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who's won over long periods of time consistently alone, which means everyone's had a mentor, a family, a coach, a pastor. And so for me, I guess identity was found when I started just establishing myself in community. And that's when it became clear, because sometimes you find out who you are based on people telling you what they really see. And sometimes you change who you're going to be.
Yes.
Like I think I've just been like, you're not gracious, or you're just not nice, or you're really into your, you know, like.
Well, that's because community helps you, it reflects back who you are, right?
Right.
They are experiencing you a certain way, so they're reflecting that back, whether good or bad.
Right.
But it is, you need community to kind of call out the greatness in
Completely.
you, the things that are hidden. So I love that. You made a couple things you said, what we avoid the enemy invades.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Like, yeah. I mean, that, what we avoid the enemy invades. And so that really is a call to, you know, show up.
Right.
Like, don't let the enemy win here.
Right.
So to talk a little bit about that.
I think there's, it's probably not the people listening. It's, you know, I just feel like, you know, there in some faith circles and communities, it's almost like we're just trying to stay safe, you know, like, so we're just trying to, like, we get into a church on Sunday, we lock the door, like, it's us, we're here, like, finally know, you know, like, grew up in that environment, and it's almost like there's this intimidation with the world. And so we actually often will sit in our Christian silo and then complain about the world we're living in.
Yeah.
Like, look what's happening in politics, or look what's happening in entertainment, or look what's happening in media, and we're just complaining about how dark it is, not realizing, and this was the statement today, darkness doesn't overshadow light.
That's right.
Like, when darkness is there, it's not because darkness won. It's simply because light isn't present. You know, so everywhere in our world that's dark, our job is not to be news reporters telling the world how dark the darkness is. Our job is to be a light to show the world how bright as light can be. And I think there's a generation that's ready to occupy spaces that the church has avoided. And of course, there's this season of life where I'd also say, if you're not strong in that space yet, like, don't go there. Like
Not
some
yet.
guys, it's like it's a
Not
permission
yet.
to be like, oh, I'm rocking it back to the clubs. I'm about to be a witness. Like if that was your old jam, like don't go back to it.
Yeah.
Like there's another
Yeah.
space that's dark. I'd always tell people, you can go to different types of darkness. Don't go to the darkness you love the most, and you still might be entertained by. You have no authority over what you still
So good.
entertain. Go to a different place that's dark and occupy there. But
That's good.
yeah, I think we have an obligation as believers to not just come to church, but be the church.
That's so good. I think also moving from a need-based statement to a faith-based statement. So you said faith can pull into the now what God has reserved for later. I so resonate with that. I mean, like, not to be greedy, but I'm like, Lord, I want what you have. I want it now. I don't want to wait, and I want to declare it. You talked a lot about declaration, about calling. You know, really, I think of Abraham calling those things that aren't as if they are. That is such a kingdom principle. So talk a little bit about that, because we got to get this in our hearts. This is what makes us different.
Yeah, I think. You know, I mean, even if you just think about the life of miracles, right? He never said pray for the sick. He said heal the sick. You know, like they actually commissioned. Yeah, he didn't say pray, heal. And I feel like there's a lot of our faith journey where we just don't understand how good our God is.
Yeah.
We don't trust him. So we actually are pleading instead of proclaiming. It's almost like we're posturing ourselves in this meek, like, if you're good enough, if you're gracious, like if you understand my need. And what I've realized is that God doesn't respond to need, he responds to faith. Like he loves your needs, he'll meet your needs. And to build the case, if he responded to need, then everywhere there's outrageous need, there should be an outrageous pouring out of his presence. And it's not the case. And there's a reason why people who understand faith continue to extend their faith, and people are like, why is things working? It's because they have this revelation. I'm not trying to convince God to be good. He's good. I now just need to stand on his promise and declare he's good. Or speak to that storm and say, be still. So it's massive on declaration. And then I would add, I talked about it a little in the message. Hopefully you listened. You went back and watched it.
You need to listen.
I think the Roman centurion part is like the part that really changed my life. And if you unpack that whole passage of scripture, you know, it says Roman centurion, when he won, he recognizes Jesus in a posture and a position that no one saw him in. Jesus looks at him and he says, what do you want me to do for your servant? Do you want me to come to the house and heal him? This Roman centurion says, I'm like you. And he didn't say a man who has authority. He says, I'm like you, a man who's under authority. Therefore, I'm over 100 men. He actually had the revelation that even God with skin on postured himself under authority so that he could have authority. That's why he said, I'm only going to do what I see my Father do. I'm only going to say what I hear my Father say. So he actually postured himself under so he could be over. I think there's a lot of, especially young people, I had issues with authority where you don't understand how significant it is. Like, so there's some people that go, man, I don't have breakthrough in money. Well, is your money under authority? Are you tithing? You know, or I don't have an issue with my marriage. Well, are you under a pastor? So for me in our season, we love authority. It sounds crazy to even say it. Like we love going, these are our pastors, these are our spiritual authorities, because we know our ability to be under is what postures us to have the authority to be over.
That's right.
And then Jesus says to him, what do you want me to do? The others, so this is back to words. I've realized often that Jesus consistently ask people to clarify the level of miracle they're expecting. You see this with blind Bartimaeus. I think it's Mark, the 51 verse. I can't remember the chapter now. And he approaches the blind man and he says, what do you want me to do for you? Like he's going, Jesus, son of David, heal me. And he goes, what do you want me to do for you?
Yeah.
Now, if you're at that moment, you'd be like, I think I got the wrong guy. You don't know what I want you to do for you. He actually knew that this blind man could have asked him for a blessing instead of for a breakthrough.
Yeah.
He literally said, what is your faith expecting? You could have said, feed me, instead of heal me. He said, I want my sight. So he says the same thing to the Roman centurion. What do you want me to do? Come to the house. And he literally begins to make up a miracle. He straight up says, just say the word. You don't have to come. That had never been done in history. It had never been done in Jesus' ministry before. He'd never healed someone not in proximity, without saying it to him personally or touching them physically.
Yeah.
So he's making up a miracle. And when Jesus leaves, it's my favorite part, he goes, let it be done just as you believed it. Basically, I've given you a blank check. Why would you, as a leader, a Christian, why would you ever stop writing zeros?
Come on.
You know, like I've said you could do whatever. And he goes, I'm just going to make this thing up just as you believe it to be. And I realized, and this was in the message, most of our lives could just be self-fulfilling prophecies. Of us actually living in the fulfillment of how bad we believed it was going to be.
And you kind of summed up this way. The level of your faith determines the level of your breakthrough.
Right.
And I think if we can get this principle, especially for young people early on, it will be a life changer, a game changer for what they can experience. And it changes your expectations. But listen, we have really bad habits, right? We have
right.
old
That's right.
thinking, we have negative thinking, and so, this is the Momentum Podcast, so I want to talk about some of your habits.
Cool.
So, first question I have for
Yes.
you is...
Podcast part 2. We're on our second one.
Podcast part 2. First of all, I want to know, what are you reading right now?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I'm trying to think of the cover right now. I just pulled it right back out. It's it's like in my bag right now. Creating a fan. It's like horrible. I'm not reading anything. It's brand recognition. That's the book I just pulled out. I personally took a straight reading sabbatical for a period of time. So being honest, it was like I'm just going to read a bunch of the Bible.
The Bible's a good book.
The last books we read great was Five Dysfunctions of a Team, which changed our organization.
For sure.
Massive.
Yeah.
The 4 Disciplines of Execution. So I'm actually going through the Rolodex of over. That changed the whole operating system of our organization. And then really, to be honest, I'm just reading the Bible. I've been making anything.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. Well, you can feel it because when you're in the Word, it shows. Right. If you put it in your heart and you just. I
listen to a lot though.
Yeah, what are your favorite podcasts?
Everybody should be listening to Craig Rochelle's Leadership Podcast.
Sure. Yes.
It's probably the best one out there in that space. His podcast on time, show me your schedule, I'll show you your values, changed our whole life.
Yes.
If you really love your family, there should be vacations scheduled. If you really love your wife or who you're dating, there should be a date scheduled.
Yes.
So it's like, look at your schedule, show your values. Craig, Andy Stanley's podcast, for me especially, probably I'd go 4 years back. Like there's a block there that like everything about visioneering, crystal clarity on what, why, and how, is absolutely brilliant. I also just listened to Inside Bill Gates' Brain.
I haven't listened to that.
It's a documentary on Netflix. It's 4 parts. Brilliant. I love learning how people think. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
So I'm more big on not just what people are thinking, but how's their brain operating.
Right.
That changed a lot of things for me.
I saw my husband watch that the other night. He's intellectual. He loves all that stuff. So I'm
so
catch up on it over Thanksgiving.
None of us know a lot of communicators,
For sure.
I think you just go on
seasons
of who you're listening to.
I commute a lot, so you drive a lot probably, so I'm always just, getting good inflow. Okay, so I want to ask about you have 3 children, right? One on the way, beautiful wife. What's your morning routine? How do you get your game on? How do you get your head on? How do you get into agreement with God?
Yeah, it's because we travel so much, it's drastically different every day. When I'm at home and I get that privilege, I'm unfortunately up very early. My whole life, I never went to bed before 12 until a year ago. All college, I never wrote a paper, started on a paper before 12. It was so bad. Yeah. But I did great. I did good at school. But that was my whole journey. Yeah. I changed my clock, and so now I'm up pretty darn early, 5:55 or 6. Yeah. And I read while I'm on the treadmill, so I read the Bible. Yeah. I go to the gym. I'm usually listening to worship while I'm also reading the Bible while I'm on the treadmill. So it's very interesting. Some people can't do both. I'm listening to Maverick City Volume 1, I'm reading my daily reading Bible, and then I'm on it. Yeah. And for me, that's this very clear space. There's no interaction. So, and then I think because we're in a season where we've created a model where if God doesn't show up, we're in trouble. Yeah. Everything we do as an organization, if God doesn't show up, we're messed up.
I am right there with you.
Yes.
We talked about that.
We did.
I need dependence.
Well, we don't, and we're strategists, so we say as an organization, strategy is your diligence, but not your dependence. Yeah. So strategy is us stewarding in the natural what God's revealed to us in the supernatural, but our dependence is on a miracle. Our dependence is on the Spirit. Our dependence is on God's presence, on God's power. So for me, there is, and I think in this journey towards doing the impossible, there's definitely sometimes a conversation. Right. It's very rare, but there's seasons probably every other month where I'll wake up and the enemy's just trying to do a really good job trying to lie or really trying to get you to agree with it. I've learned from many people out there listening, the devil is not often trying to get you to believe a lie, he's just trying to get you to doubt the truth. Oh. That's where it starts. So if it's never I think most of us are a little maybe intelligent in the faith, you're never just going to go I'm going to believe that it's an outright lie. Yeah. Some people are, but he wants you to doubt the truth. So doubt the truth about who that person is, who you're working with, how that leader's thinking, doubt people's motives. That's how he gets in. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's that there's moments where I'm we're just constantly disagreeing with it, know what's happening, and then move on.
Anchor to the truth.
Yeah, every day's different. There's not I don't have, besides that little morning workout, if I came back from an Australia trip and I'm gone, that's going to get sacrificed and I'm going to be with my kids.
That's right.
You
It's
know,
competing values, and you're gonna, if you're value driven, you're gonna
Exactly.
choose which one's best for the
Yeah.
moment.
We're just never going to give the world what we don't give our family.
That's right.
You
I
know?
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That's great. Okay, I have one final question.
Great.
Thank you.
Sorry
You've
for
been
the long answers.
No,
Yeah.
you've been so generous with us, and I'm so grateful. But last question is, how do you keep or maintain momentum in your life?
Yeah, it's been great.
Because it's momentum's created, right? You know,
Yeah.
people just think I should be, have momentum
Right.
and energy. So how do you? What are a couple things?
I feel like it's more about our core values, because I don't think we've ever sat there and, maybe you're releasing a marketing campaign, you're thinking, here's how we increase engagement or that. But I think personally, we just want to stay in rhythm. So we're not trying to get, I say this all the time, if you get there before God does, it doesn't make you early, it makes you wrong. So if you get into that relationship before God says get in that relationship, if you start that business, that ministry, that it could even be a God thing, but it's not in the right time. And so for us, like, we're just so big on, we would rather God pull us forward than pull us back.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just staying in rhythm. So for us, it's if I'm in obedience, if I'm walking in humility, if I'm extending my life in honor, like these core, I think, components of who we are, then God takes care of the momentum factor. So for me, I'd be like, am I in obedience? That's all that matters. So whether it looks like, oh, this is success, or you're flying forward, or you're pulled back, I'm in obedience. I maybe even answer it this way: we got to make sure we judge seeds in season. So often we plant a seed in ministry or life or whatever it is, or we start tithing, or we just start obeying a biblical principle. We plant a seed, and then we turn around and go, give me fruit. And like we're only measuring, even with an Instagram word, you're only measuring fruit, not health. So a seed breaks out, its roots go into the ground. That's not fruit, but that is health and that is growth. Mm-hmm. That's momentum, but it doesn't look like momentum. Then it branches out of the ground. That's not fruit, but that's health and growth. Then the branches spread out. Like, there's all this process which is health and growth, but no fruit.
Yes.
And then there's fruit, and then guess what? God prunes. And that's still an aspect of momentum.
But it doesn't feel like it.
No, and that's health and that's growth. So for me, it's less about do I feel like we got everyone coming with, and it's more like, am I in rhythm with what God's doing? And also, I think, embracing the process. It's probably maybe like the worst momentum answer, but that's...
I love it, because it's a different answer than what we've heard.
Yeah.
But it's so biblical,
right.
And it's a new way of thinking, and even the pruning is actually momentum.
It is momentum.
It is forward movement,
right.
for the purpose of God. So you have been so generous. This has been so much fun. I've experienced you in such a wonderful way. I really do truly feel there's a friendship here.
That's awesome.
And I'm so excited for what God has for you and Missions.me and everything that God's doing. And we'd love to participate in One Nation One Day in the future.
Awesome.
One day in LA, July.
Come on.
July, what, give me the date?
19th to the 26th.
Okay,
yeah, go to onedayla.com if you're listening. There's everything there. But let's dream. You are the coolest, and I'm not just saying this to get my back, doing the coolest president I've ever met. It's like the best. I'm like, you're not a president.
I know. What am I?
Awesome.
Exactly. No, I'm
you're
just
like way too cool
I'm just
and
me.
relevant. I can tell.
I'm just me,
That's awesome.
and this is the assignment the Lord has given me. I want to steward it well, and I would love to see you back for LPU conference. So, Jedidiah, you're the best,
awesome.
And listen to this podcast again. Listen to the original Chapel podcast. You're not going to want to miss it, and share it with all your friends, because you know what? The world needs what this man has to say, because it's a word from the Lord. Thank y'all for joining us, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Extra credit if you listen.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much.
Yeah,